All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to start with the general meeting and do a couple of very quick administrative tasks before we get onto the zoning docket at 1 p.m. So we just have two things on the general meeting docket. These were both cases that are footway appeals that were scheduled for June 3rd, and the applicants did not appear. They were notified, they did not appear for the hearing. We waited to see if they had some kind of good reason and reached out. They did not reach out to us afterwards. So I'm going to ask that these two footway appeals be dismissed for failure to appear. Failure to appear.
Yeah, I move that we dismiss.
Second.
I agree for dismissal.
I'm in agreement.
All right, 4 votes to dismiss these footway appeals for failure to appear or to follow up in any way after their hearing date. I put this circuit court order in the pocket of your binder in case you want to take a look at it. This was an affirmance that we got of a really old case that has been appealed twice now. I actually don't even remember if Mr. Marcosi was on the board at the time that this was decided or not. But this was, to remind the board, a variance request for an expansion of a deck that had already been built, and the neighbor objected to it. Back in 2018, we said that it did not require a variance. That was appealed and remanded to us. The court said that it did require a variance, so then we had a variance hearing for the deck, and we denied the request for the variance because the board found that the property was unique, but not necessarily that there was a practical difficulty involved. They had already had a deck and they were expanding it, and the board decided that this deck was, a nice amenity, but not necessarily a practical difficulty in using the property. And then that was appealed again by the opposition, which is interesting because the opposition was the one that actually won that. The variance was denied, which is what they wanted, but they had a procedural issue that they didn't like the way we ruled on a motion to dismiss. So they appealed anyway. It was affirmed by the circuit court. I just wanted to pass along the order in case you all wanted to read it. So at this point, it's possible it could be appealed further, but probably DHCD will have to now make this property owner remove the deck. But that is no longer our business. I don't really have anything else to say during the general meeting. I think you can take them in any order that you prefer, Mr. Chair. Leland is the chair today, filling in for James, who has a trial that he can't get out of. And yeah, I guess we should probably wait until 1 p.m. to actually start.
Yeah.
So let's go off the record for 3 minutes until 1 p.m. and then we'll get going.
Okay, we're all on record.
Should we take Birchwood first, though? The additional use?
If you want, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, are you ready?
Ready.
Back on the record at 1:02.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the 1 p.m. docket for the BMZA. My name is Becky Witt. I'm the Executive Director of the BMZA. Today we have Leland Shelton as the Chairman of the board. We also have Victor Clark, Frank Bonaventure, and David Marcosi as board members. So we have 4 board members present today. Please silence your cell phones. If you want to speak with someone, please do that out in the lobby. When it's your turn, when your case is called, please come forward and make sure your microphone is turned on. When it's on, it will be green. Right now, they are all red, so you'll need to press the button to make them green and turn them on. You'll need to introduce yourself and spell your name for the court reporter and take an oath before giving testimony. If you haven't already written your name on the sign-in sheet over here on this table by the door, please sign in. The board will probably vote on your appeal today, but the vote is not the final decision. We have to issue a resolution which requires drafting and review, and that takes several weeks. We will send it to you. We will upload it either to Acela if your application was submitted in Acela, or we will send it to you by email. And I will turn it over to Mr. Shelton.
Good afternoon, everyone. We look forward to hearing from you all today. Of course, we ask that if anybody is here to speak in opposition of any project, to please remember to keep your comments directed towards the use or the application, and to please not repeat anything that any previous people has said in opposition, right? Now calling appeal number 250276619 Birchwood Avenue, Felicia Alexander, applicant, to use a property as a 12-child daycare center requiring conditional use approval. Now hearing from planning and staff.
All right, this is a request for a daycare center child up to 12 children. And yeah, only the conditional use is required. There's no variance that's needed. They have enough parking for the employees. And yeah, the board might want to ask a little bit about the hours of operation. How many hours a day will this daycare center be open? And usually we also talk about things like drop off and pickup, exterior lighting, and open space and recreational areas.
Okay, Appeal 027 for a daycare center. Just a modest increase, just for additional children to a home daycare. Usually a major concern from planning is the pickup and drop-off situation. In this case, the property does have a double-wide driveway, as well as about 80 feet of frontage on the street. It's an R3, so there's a good deal of space between the house. So we'll be leaving off our usual recommendation of looking into a loading zone and recommending approval of the appeal.
Ma'am, could you stand to be sworn? Thank you.
You swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And you are Felicia Alexander, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Alexander, tell us a bit about your daycare center. Could you start with the hours of operation?
It's from 6 to 6, and it's 7 days a week.
Okay, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us about your plans for pickup and drop off of children?
Well, currently I'm already licensed as a child care daycare, so pickup is just in front of the house, and drop off is the same in front of the house.
Have you reached out to DOT and to the city's Department of Transportation in the past to ask about a loading zone for the
No.
property? We encourage applicants to do that. It could help as you expand, it could help make sure that you ease the pressure for pickup and drop off and loading right in front of the property. It might help you out.
Well, I have a driveway too.
Okay.
I don't
So
know if
parents
that
usually just pull in the driveway
Yes,
one at a
and
time?
then my gate is right there, and they just come
Okay.
through.
And it's not like a bunch of parents come at the same time?
No.
They usually have a regular time when they come to pick up their children?
Yes.
Any other questions?
No, no questions.
Okay, no questions. Well, after hearing the testimony from planning and of the applicant, I don't believe that the establishment of the expansion of the daycare center to up to 12 children at this location would lead to any negative consequences that would be above and beyond having a daycare center anywhere else in the zoning district. And for that reason, I vote to approve her application.
Agree. I agree.
I also approve.
Thank you, ma'am. You will get a resolution in a few weeks from the BMZA. Please do not, expand your use to 12 children until you get that resolution from our office.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Through email?
So in your case, we'll upload it to Acela.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank
You
you.
too. Now calling case number 2024-154, 306 West Lorraine Avenue, Nate Prettle, on behalf of the applicant, to construct a two-story rear addition with a third floor on the property, requiring variances to bulk and yard regulations. Now hearing from planning and staff.
All right, so this addition requires two variances. One is minimum rear yard setback, 20 feet is required. The applicant says that 5 feet is proposed. Our staff report says 0 is proposed because there is a rear deck on the first floor that goes all the way back to the rear lot line. And so anyway, we have it as 0 feet proposed, 20-foot variance required. And then maximum lot coverage, 80% is allowed, 98% is proposed. Oh, I don't know if it's 98. This, I think that math doesn't, oh yes, it does, sorry. 80% is allowed, 98% is proposed, and 18% variance, excuse me. I forgot how to do math for a second. So the board needs to find, as usual, for variances, that there is a peculiarity to the property. That is how the approval standards have changed from unique to peculiar. So something peculiar about the property and a practical difficulty in developing the property without the variance. And I'll let, obviously, the applicant can provide that information and argument about why this property is unique or peculiar. And I'll turn it over to planning.
So for this addition, regarding the lot coverage variance and the required yard, planning has no objection to the appeal.
Prettle?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Will your client be speaking?
Yes,
Could you stand and be sworn, sir?
I will as well.
Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give, the statements that you make, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Prettle, I know you, can you state and spell your name?
Michael Francis Colligan, Michael. Colligan is Colligan.
Chair, if I may, I'm going to hand out a couple documents.
thank you.
I don't expect you to read all this, but just, I have a memo for each of the board members here. Mr. Chair, yours, that one's kind of for you, just
okay.
because there is an engineering letter and some other that I didn't make 5 copies of. And these, we have a number of letters of support as well as some sort of contextual information about.
Okay.
Great, well, Mr. Chair, Nate Prettle. I'm here with Mike Colligan, the owner and occupant of 306 West Lorraine. I'm really excited to be here. This has been a long process with Mike and his plans to improve his property. The primary goal in these improvements are to provide additional living space for himself and his family. You can see are in the audience here today, his fiance and their 3 children. However, the nature of this request is not just based on the desire to add additional living space. Frankly, it is a necessity. And we get into the more than just be a peculiarity, there's a uniqueness to this property that is something that I have not encountered before, and frankly is pretty interesting, and we're going to address in a second. But the other reason for this application is because the property is experiencing significant structural deterioration and is compromised to a point where something has to be done about it. And so the unique situation that, imposed upon this property has to do with what is called a ghost river or a hidden stream that runs directly beneath this property. And there's some press clippings in there. This has been sort of in the public sphere over the past year. There's a public art project called Ghost Rivers. The name of this was actually the Sumwalt Run. And you have some I'll have Mike add a little bit of information. But where this the former stream, which is now underground, runs, there's what's called an escarpment, or the slope of this that runs directly beneath the applicant's property here, and that is causing significant damage, evidenced by the civil engineer's letter. And so the unique aspect of it, not only is there this ghost river, sure, that impacts some of the other properties in the immediate area, but the particular location of this on the escarpment, or the sloped portion of this, has a more detrimental impact at this location than it will at any of the other locations here. And that's evidenced by, Mr. Chair, in your packet, there are several photos of cracking of and I'm going to have Mr. Colligan, address that, but significant cracking of the structural walls and the foundation. And per the
current conditions, just to be clear, of
this
property?
This is this property.
Okay.
Yeah, the pictures are of this. Well, the interior pictures are this property. The exterior pictures are historic. The Sumwalt Run was filled in with essentially rubble in 1905, and so this property is built on this fill. Not only is it built on the fill, it's built on the slope of the fill. And so when we started looking at this, and engaged a civil engineer, there were a couple options here. One, was to do an extensive and financially onerous geotechnical study, which would have borings going down potentially 80 feet or more. The other option, is to expand the foundation, of the property as is. Not just where it is, but it would essentially go the entire length of the property. Along with that, so part of it is, well, what do you need the variance for? Just get this new foundation. Or that is not feasible in the real world. A bank was never going to finance what is in itself is an extremely costly measure that needs to be done just to save the house, just to save the property itself. And however, if you're adding additional value to the house, then you're able to accomplish this. And so that's part of it. That was the goal all along. And again, you have the civil engineer's letter, you have documents, picture. I mean, this is Mr. Colligan has been on this block since 2010, has been in this house since 2015, and you can speak to the continued deterioration, of the structural integrity of this property. And so again, we've got a unique condition here of the former Sumwalt Run, which is now a ghost river, and the escarpment. And again, I'm happy to point out any of the particular instances I'm speaking to talk a little bit about the structural and civil engineer's letter, if you'd like. But before I'm going to get back to a few things, I would like to have Mike say a few words about his time in the community and sort of his role and his desire to stay in Baltimore City. I mean, you see these this go quite often. People who love Baltimore, they want to stay in the city. The city's master plan made it a priority to retain families, and so that's where, Mike, do you want to talk a little bit maybe about that, and then just briefly about some of the damage that you witness on a daily basis?
Yes, thank you, Nate. Hi, everyone, and thank you for hearing our case today. My name is Michael Colligan. I moved onto this block in 2010, like Nate said, and have and kind of felt like this is my home forever. My neighbors have become our extended family. Both of our children have been born on this block. We have established we've been welcomed with open arms into the community, and we have tried our best to contribute in the way that we've been contributed to by our neighbors. Again, it's an extended family for us. Our house is a place where our kids gather and where neighbor kids gather from around the area when they want a glass of water, when they want to play on the sidewalk. We frequently have dinners for our neighbors, for our community. Basically, our houses, we see it as a source of capital, and I've been involved with a lot of the construction. I'm a carpenter by trade, and I've since gotten into some real estate and construction, contracting. We've built structures all over the neighborhood. Myself and a couple of other guys started the Remington Improvement Fund, which is basically if somebody in our neighborhood has a project that they need done and is a danger to their life or safety, or they just want done, we will go do it for them. It's been funded. It's lasted, I think, about 7 years now, and it's now funded by outside sources. I've taught classes at the community school in our neighborhood. At one point, I worked with the Community Law Center on establishing a land trust in the neighborhood. It never, unfortunately, got off the ground before some of the values went up, but it was a way to combat gentrification. I spoke in front of City Council on that. I coach lacrosse at the KIPP School in West Baltimore. We are building, lastly, I'll say we are building a family store. We started a pit beef stand called Illegal Tender, which I'm told is the best pit beef on our block, at least. And our kids work it, and we work it together as a family. We do it in the neighborhood. We do it for community. They have made much more than I have, I promise you, from working at the stand. But it's community is what we are doing it all for, really. And as far as this house, we secured our financing. Well, we had an opportunity to refinance the house in, I think, February and March of 2023. And we had planned to go in for the variance. Then we were told at that time that was going to be an impossibility, that the regulations had changed, and then once we had done these plans, we had talked to the engineer who, because of the ghost rivers that are under this house. When I first bought the house, I took off the drywall, and you can see in the pictures there was a little crack in the basement wall that I could see. By the time we got to the top,
Let's focus on that crack,
yeah.
because that crack is pretty much where the what is it, stone wall? Some walls run.
Yes.
Is directly impacting the particular
Yes,
project.
yes.
So
That's civil engineering report.
yes. So let's really hone in on how that is how that is causing your need for this variance.
Sure. But I will say, by the time we got to the top of the house, it was a foot. Our house is cracked. I mean, it cracked the cast iron pipe at the top, going out to the roof.
Wow.
The kitchen was 12. Yes, over the course, it was 12 inches, and this is not a long house. It is 12 inches lower than the front of the house. We can't play marbles. When the blueberries spill, we know where they go to in the kitchen. So we've known there was a problem. When we talked to the engineer about doing any project in the house, he said, well, we would need to core drill, or I forget what they call it, helical drill.
Helical piles.
Yes, we would need to do a geotechnical study, which was I forget how many thousands, but enough. And that if we didn't hit anything going down, which we are half a block away, we are on the other side of, if everybody remembers the 26th Street sinkhole, we are on the other side of that stretch of. There are places in the neighborhood where you can put a tape measure 50 feet down into the earth and not hit anything. So it's it's been there 100 years. Hopefully, it's not going anywhere. So that is what we're dealing with. The engineer recommended that if we were to do that, the house could be rendered worthless and there's no stopping it. So the idea of going back deeper was brought to us by the engineer, and it made sense to, he kind of said bigger boat type of a thing.
Mike, that's super helpful here, and Mr. Chair, I'm going to sort of tie this up and get down to the nitty gritty, and I think we've covered the uniqueness here. I think it would absolutely qualify as peculiar, if not unique in itself, not just the Ghost River, but the escarpment or the slope where in portion of the fill where this is built. And per the engineer's letter, again, the property could not be stabilized due to the topographical conditions, unless the foundation is expanded or this extensive geotechnical study is done, and there's no guarantee when that's done, that will be a solution in itself. And so the expense of stabilizing this property, which has to be done, and to be clear, the worst part of the structural is at the rear of it, which is closer to the river, which is where these cracks are. Without doing that, it is going to be nearly impossible for the applicant. The hardship comes from his ability to not only improve the property, but to maintain it as is. And I think Mike sort of alluded to this, but this is something that must be addressed. You cannot.
So let's go through this hypothetical.
Yep.
Let's say the applicant wanted to renovate but had to do so within the confines of the regulations of the zoning law, right? Did not get a variance. What would have to be done in order to make that happen?
My understanding is that would not be financially feasible, through
Geotechnical study
fin-
alone could.
Yeah, I mean, look, that it alone
end.
could essentially, and I don't, be uncomfortable saying this,
Okay.
but essentially act as a lien on the property.
Yeah.
For in
You
perpetuity.
get condemned.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about the practical reasons, for this variance. At this point, the sort of laudable goals of staying in Baltimore City from someone who has spent much of their life working as an activist on the behalf of his community and the city as a whole. Mike and I think we met maybe 15 years ago
Okay, so let's
during
say-
a community project.
So let's say we establish that adhering to the strict letter of the law would be impractical.
It would be a unnecessary hardship. Absolutely.
Why do you need 20 feet?
Why do we need 20 feet? Well, the foundation is likely going to have to go out that far. And if we're doing this, why would you not improve the property, in the way that provides the best value for, not value is not the right word, for the best living environment for Mike and his family. Again, there's proposed legislation, and we can't consider anything that is proposed, but essentially make these things by right. So I think the goals of the city are to allow this to happen. Again, we're not talking, anything that's proposed, is just that. It's not relevant here today. But I think we should also note that there are 11 letters of support, including both of the adjacent neighbors. Be clear, one of the adjacent neighbor letter has since left. However, the newer neighbor has given Mike their authorization to say they are not objected to it. We have a letter of support from the community association. And I'm just going to some of the required findings and approval standards. Is this variance in harmony with the purpose intent of the city code? Absolutely, and it is. The master plan speaks directly to the ability for individuals to improve their properties and to continue to remain in Baltimore City.
I think for us, just really focusing on the McLean factors here. I want to make sure we have enough on the record to establish, why 15 feet might not be enough, why 20 feet is needed.
And the engineer gave me, he had to break it down for, layman's terms. And how he explained it to me at least was point load versus dispersed load. So we have a house and we are adding weight to it by nature of the renovation. We're assuming that there may or may not be solid earth underneath what we're doing. So, so putting more weight in a specific spot would require us to underpin the existing foundation to support it. By going out farther, the additional 8 feet, it allowed us to disperse, if putting a pen on a piece of glass is how he explained it, versus putting a popsicle stick. And he wouldn't sign off without a geotechnical study and potentially helical piers going down. People have explored helical piers in our neighborhood, some of the bigger developers, and it's not good. It's a huge risk. It can torch. If we find nothing, we're in deep trouble. So that was how he explained it to me. If we had to, yes, we would have to basically underpin and do that for the rest of the house. So
that's one of the reasons. The other, I'm going to go back to the financing. I mean, this is a 900 square foot house here. And there's, even at the lowest level, we're talking, extreme costs for this structural improvements here. So it's not the ultimate square footage would be closer to 1,900 square foot. I mean, this isn't a 5,000 square foot house. We have minimum of 5 people, at all times. at this, we've got letters of support. So I think you have two reasons, based on that uniqueness and hardship. One, which is included and can be on the record in this, engineer's letter as well, which talks about that the fact that this is not just built on the fill, it's built on the escarpment where it goes from solid to the slope, and it has different load bearings at different points on that supports the structure going back as far as possible.
Okay.
And I should also mention, we have a letter from planning of no objection, and the design was also one additional reason, we could, push this a little bit more towards the front, Mr. Chair. However, there are design guidelines that the planning department has that requires setbacks when you have sort of consistent two-story blocks. So that's a reason, we could be pushed to the front, other than that as well. So we've got three reasons why we need to go further into the rear yard.
Okay. Do you guys have any other questions?
I mean, I think what's interesting, and thank you for the explanation, because that was exactly what my question was going to be, that the chair explains why 20 and not 15, and your description of, and having a little bit of background with how these kind of things work, but the understanding that a larger structural support for the property is in fact more solid than just a smaller portion of that in the description of a punch versus a spread. Kind of a footing, in lack of better terms, but that makes some kind of sense to me. Obviously, there's much more calculation involved, any engineering behind all of that explanation, but that makes somewhat relevant background and knowledge, and makes somewhat sense to how to remediate such a really complicated issue. So I think I'm good with this.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, no, go. The two neighbors, you said one is not there, but who had written a letter before.
Yeah.
So there's a new person there. And the one that was there and is still there, have they ever had any desire to expand that you know of?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for them, Mike. May
To expand,
their properties.
no, she's a newer neighbor. She's one of the GRIA board members who signed off the community association board members who had signed off on the letters. She moved in recently. I don't know if she has a desire to expand. The neighbor on the other side is he's a landlord, so he's out of the area and he rents to people. He loved the idea. He did have. He thought it was exciting to be able to have the possibility, and most neighbors that we've talked to are excited about the possibility of making these houses bigger. Certainly, the new families that are on the block. There's a lot of babies, and you see person after person just moving to bigger houses, even though they love the community and they love the block. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we haven't spoken to the board member, who the other neighbor, if she had a desire to expand. She might. I know she wants to grow vines on the side of her house. I'm sure she's a gardener. So.
Well, we have to make sure we're not doing legally what becomes a precedent that can be used. For
Look, I would say, based on a lot of the discussion today, this is quite an undertaking. And I can't speak to the conditions. And we've had expert advice and statements saying that there are particular issues at this property, so we can't speak to the other ones. But my guess is that there are similar, if not slightly different issues throughout the block, and I think each one is going to have to look at that individually based on the merits of its own specific circumstances and address. But I think it's just evidenced by the photos of the cracking, Mr. Chair. I think one of the sort of aerial images behind the engineer's letter, you can clearly see that there's just the roofs of the houses where one time were level is at its dipped and lowest point right at 306 West Lorraine.
And they have expressed gratitude that we are going to be stabilizing the party wall foundation as a result of what we're doing. So it will make their houses more secure.
That kind of led to my other question. Some of the recommendations from the civil engineering's report was to oversize footings, but also underpin depths of 30 feet.
If we are not, if we don't expand the footprint of the house.
Those are the options if this expanded.
That's something really important. So you're saying that expanding the footprint of the house remediates the need to underpin at the depths of 30 feet from the recommendation of your engineer.
Yes, and that's,
It's a practical
it
difference.
could be more than 30 feet, yes.
That's not
It becomes more
what.
difficult than that.
It would affect, if we were to go down 30 feet and not hit anything, it would effectively render our neighbors' houses worthless. You couldn't refinance on a bank, so, our house as well. So there was there's very limited option as far as adding any weight or underpinning, digging out basements and things like that. It's
Okay.
I think I've heard enough. After reviewing the applicant's application, evidence presented today, and testimony presented today, I'm inclined to vote in favor of the variance. For the following reasons: I think the property is unique, particularly due to somewhat run and what we've heard about how the run is impacting not only the neighboring properties, but also its particular harm on the subsurface conditions of 306 West Lorraine Avenue, as evidenced by the crack in the foundation that we see. We've heard that because of this unique condition on the property, strict adherence to the zoning code would be a practical difficulty. Namely, it would be cost prohibitive, and it could also cause particular harm to neighboring properties also. Granting the variance would do substantial justice not only to this applicant, but as evidenced by the many letters of support from neighboring homeowners and from neighbors. From the testimony we heard today, it would be good for the neighbors too in the surrounding community. It would also protect the public safety and welfare, if this variance was granted. The reason why, the 20 feet variance is needed, I want to make sure we have this in the record, is because, the additional expansion of the space, the property makes it easier to finance the project by adding additional living area. It's a practical solution it's the best solution to really, a very difficult situation that the applicant faces. This is the practical difficulty is entirely caused by the code, and it's not by any intentional action or inaction of the parties. It's not exclusively on the desire to increase the value or income potential of the property. It's to make it livable and safe. It was not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property. And of course, the variance is in harmony with the code. There's no urban renewal plan, and it is also in the city's master plan. For these reasons, I'm a yes.
I'm a yes also.
Based on the facts, I'm a yes.
And I'm also yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good luck.
Can you please pass down anything that you got from this applicant?
Yes. This is what
You can keep that if you want, or whatever.
a lot of dupes.
Yeah, this one here. I'll just leave this to you.
Thank you all very much.
No problem. Now I'm calling Appeal 25-020-4518 Keswick Road. Mr. Nate Prattle on behalf of the applicant to construct a two-story semi-detached single-family dwellings. To construct two semi-detached single-family dwellings on the property, requiring variance to the yard regulations. First, we will hear from planning and staff.
All right, there is essentially one variance needed here, minimum interior side yard, but it's on each side. So 15 feet is required, 5 feet, 3 inches is proposed on each side, and so 9 feet, 9-inch side yard variances on each side are needed here to build two semi-detached single-family dwellings, which is essentially a duplex on the property. And yeah, the board as you all know, needs to find something peculiar about the property that leads to a practical difficulty, and that requires these interior side yard variances. I'll turn it over to planning.
So 4518 Keswick Road is currently an unimproved lot that measures about 50 feet by 125. And that is about double of the standard for the block face, which is half that, 25 by 125. And the applicant is proposing a subdivision of that lot to create two 225 by 125 lots, which will result in a variance being required to construct a duplex with similar yards to the rest of the block. We do note that this will be required to go through the subdivision review process, and any structures will need to go through design review, but the Department of Planning recommends approval of the appeal.
Mr. Prado?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just got a handout.
Yes. Could you please stand and be sworn? Have you ever?
You swear or affirm under the Poly Perjury that the answers that you give, the statements that you make, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you state and spell your full name?
Alexander Mavroulis, Alexander. Mavroulis is M as in Mike, AV as in Victor, ROULIS as in Sam.
Mr. Prado?
All right, great, Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. Nate Prettle, TW Consulting here with the contract purchaser of the subject property, Alex Mavroulis. And we're here to request a variance, you can call it one variance or two. It's an interior side yard variance to the two proposed structures, subject to a subdivision. And there would be a variance of 9 feet 9 inches. As planning recommended, or as planning stated, that this property, is peculiar in a few senses. One, it's what I would consider a double wide lot. It is roughly, at least twice as wide, if not more than twice as wide as the majority of the homes on the block. This is in the Evergreen community of North Baltimore. I should mention, full disclosure, that I'm a resident of the Evergreen community. There's no bearing on this, but I live about, 3/4 of a block away on Shenley Road. And so there are unique aspects as well as peculiar aspects to this property that, in themselves create, a hardship, which has led to the variance. I'm going to run down them quickly. One, it's peculiar in the fact it's the only undeveloped lot along the 45 and 4600 blocks of Keswick Road. Those are the two blocks of Keswick that are within, that are sort of similar to each other and within the Evergreen Community Association, or the Evergreen Community. Keswick Road, runs from 29th Street up to Windhurst, 29th Street on the south to Windhurst, and it has a number of different types of homes. However, within the Evergreen community, they are almost entirely semi-detached duplexes on lots between 22 feet to 25 feet wide. So that's what we're proposing here. We're going to have two 25-foot wide lots, two 20-foot wide homes. You have spacing that is similar and no less than a few other properties on the block. So the reason that we're here asking for the variance, and one of the unique conditions of this property, has to do with a severe slope at the front of the property. And you can see it in some of the sign posting photos that were attached here. It is overgrown and it dips from west to east along the length of the property towards Keswick Road. You've got a 20-foot front yard requirement here. We're meeting that. We could build up to that. However, if it wasn't for this slope, we probably would locate this closer to the front, except we haven't said you had put it back an additional 7 feet. So, well, why can't we move this house 7 feet towards the rear? Well, you need to have some sort of rear yard. Forget about the rear yard requirements. You also have to have off-street parking. So to have a practical use, and so the best solution for this proposal is to request this interior side yard variance. Not only that, does the uniqueness and that hardship create the need for this. This is what is around the neighborhood. We spent a fair amount of time meeting on site with the community association and the immediate neighbors to this property. You mentioned the seller, who my client has the property under contract from, is the adjacent neighbor at 4522 Keswick. One of the reasons that we postponed this was originally scheduled for June 3rd. There was the community association president asked us to spend some more time contacting the owner of 4516 Keswick, who we found out had been deceased for a number of years, and we'd reached out to theirs. Somebody living there, Alex and the community association and I had reached out. We hadn't spoken to them, however, the majority we'd met on site, and had further conversations. I'm not going to speak for the community, but I think if they had any issues, they would be here today. And the community president is, I believe he may be on vacation, but this is the date that he'd asked us, to have here. I think we had a thorough and productive community conversation. And if you look at the memo that I handed out, has some, you can see in the image that was on page 2, you notice that the only undeveloped lot, double the length of the rest of this. This is also within the Roland Park area master plan, the Roland Park master plan area, and some of the provisions from their zoning section, which also included, under the approval standards and required findings. This is a direct quote. It says, "Only allow appropriate uses that protect the community's historic and primarily residential character, promote appropriately scaled and attractively designed buildings with appropriate height, setback, design standards," which is exactly what we've done here, to match this. If I'm happy to provide additional testimony, but I think the peculiar, and I would argue unique aspects of this slope, which is not found, in the same manner that it is here on other properties, prevents us from moving forward, closer to the front lot line, and requires a wider building. But still, the relief requested would put this in line with what else is in, the rest of the neighborhood. Based on that, hardship, not being able to improve a significant section of this, site. I think we could also look at this. Well, why can't you just build one single, very larger single-family home? Frankly, we could. However, that is not what's called for by the Roland Park master plan. That is not what's within character of the neighborhood. Evergreen neighborhood, is sort of almost wholly surrounded by the Roland Park Association, which are constituted by much, much larger homes, different design features, and this lot would be more attuned to something in that neighborhood. Evergreen in itself, has always been the smaller homes. Again, the home that I live in is a semi-detached, and so of this character. And so going into this, the goals were to match the character of the neighborhood, and to comply as closely as possible with the zoning and subdivision regulations here. And I think we've done that, absent one variance on each property, which so happens to be kind of in line with what else is in the neighborhood. And if it weren't for these, the hardship created by the slope and the challenge with developing that, we may very well have had a by right project. But again, that portion of the site is undevelopable, hence the plan that we have here. And we think this is a absolutely reasonable proposal. To answer any questions.
You gotta go back, huh? You gotta go back. You can't build on the front line because of the slope.
Correct. I mean, it can't be developed. Also, some of the specimen trees, it's just.
It's a build adequate living area. You guys decided to build a building.
I mean, I think adequate would be fair, but it's more than just adequate. It's sort of the minimum standards of what today's living is. Sure, we could take 9 feet off of that, and you've got a 10-foot house. It's just frankly, it's not going to work. And there are theoretical other scenarios where you could do this, but none of they probably wouldn't meet the subdivision regulations. They would absolutely not be within character of the neighborhood. You could potentially have the alley, designated a named street for frontage. There are some carriage houses there. But again, that would prevent us from providing off-street parking. We could have one, fronting on Keswick, one fronting on this alley, again, which, however, again, that would prevent off-street parking from happening on either lot. So again, we're coming back for variances, for that as well. I think it should be worth noting that this property, the lot size itself is about 1,250 square feet more than you would need for 2 semi-detached homes. But not only that, this would allow 2 detached structures based on the lot area, which has a higher minimum lot area requirement. So I think, and the point that I'm getting at here is that the lot area exists for these homes. It just has to do with the hardship of the undevelopable area, and the configuration of the lot, and it being longer than it is wide. I think that this proposal complies as closely with the zoning regulations as possible while also fulfilling these other goals, which are very important. The character of the neighborhood is sort of the number one issue that the neighborhood brought up in our discussions. We want this to fit in. We want this to fit in, and this is the proposal that fits in.
Any other questions? Any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, so having reviewed the application, the evidence presented by the applicant and the testimony of the applicant today, I do find that the property is unique due to lot size, and which is double that of similar properties in the area. Also, it's unique because of the slope at the front of the building, which creates a practical difficulty with building within that front area, causing the property to have to be moved back a bit further than is needed by the code, and requiring a wider building footprint to allow for a living area that is consistent to other properties in the area. I do not find that the reason that the applicant would like to build needs the variance is for strictly financial means. I think it's so that he can build properties, homes that are really in line with the character of the community, and also supports building more density here in the city and in this neighborhood. The practical difficulties entirely caused by this code. And so, for that reason, I'm a yes for the variance. I do not think that the variance will be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. The variance is in harmony with the city code. There's no urban renewal plan in the city's comprehensive master plan, and it's not in the CHAP district. And a variance will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare of the community. I'm also I would like to make sure that the city's planning memo, the planning department's memo, which cites that the proposed use would be similar to the character of homes in the immediate area that have, that are largely contain duplexes with similar spacing. I think that goes to show that this property, although it requires a variance, it would end up, taking this vacant lot and making something that's very in harmony with the community. So for that reason, I'm a yes.
I'm a yes also.
I'm a yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you, Mr. Prato.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
All right, that's it for the day.
That's a record for the